Hey guys, in this video I just thought I'd do something a little bit different, kind of doing a dual retro review here of Robots in Disguise and Cybertron Optimus Prime. I feel these two figures have a lot of similarities, so I feel they kind of belong together in a video because they're roughly the same size, got similar coloration, they're both parts formers, and they share a lot of aesthetic similarities. Go ahead and put these things side by side. That way you can really see the height is very similar. Now, RID is definitely thicker in the front, but in the back, just turn these guys around here, I think Cybertron has them beat. As far as length goes, they are pretty darn similar. Kind of put them next to each other here. Cybertron is slightly longer by maybe a quarter of an inch or so. It's definitely not a big difference. I'm going to go ahead and move Cybertron Prime out of the way. And we'll just focus in on RID Prime here real quick. Now, this was originally released in Japan is a fire convoy in the Car Robots cartoon, because all Robots in Disguise was a redub of Car Robots. So, and in Japan, Optimus Prime is called Convoy. So what's a little interesting is, if you can see this in the video, his tires actually say Fire Convoy. And that would make sense because this is a fire truck, so hence Fire Optimus Prime. We got some Japanese characters there, and the word Cybertron, because in Japan, Autobots are called Cybertrons and Decepticons are Destrons. I'll go ahead and give you a 360 view of this guy. Now, one difference between the Japanese toy and the American release is these Autobot symbols that are on the side right here do not appear on the Japanese toy. And of course, they did change the voice chip in here, because if you pop some batteries in here in this guy, and you press the button on the top in between his sirens, he'll light up, make siren noises, talk. Unfortunately, I don't have any batteries in him right now, so I can't really demonstrate that for you. But the capability is there. And that pretty much wraps up the 360 view of this guy. Aesthetically, I think this guy looks pretty good. It's not often that you see Optimus as a fire truck, but I think it suits the character well, since Optimus Prime is, you know, a fairly noble guy. I could definitely see him being involved with search and rescue. Anyway, one neat thing about this fire truck is the ladder extends really far. It goes way up there. In fact, it went out of frame. And I'll go ahead and zoom the camera up for you so you can see how far up that goes. It goes up a good foot or so, maybe a little more than that. Goes up real tall, maybe almost 2 feet, which is pretty neat. One other neat feature he has is you press this button here. It's on top, in the middle of the top of the ladder, and we got 2 hoses that pop out. He's got a button back here that'll deploy, well, usually we'll deploy 4 missiles. Let's try that again. Well, that time we got 3, but all 4 should pop out, and all 4 of the missiles do fire. And that's pretty much it. Now, one thing about this toy is he doesn't really scale all that well with other toys from the line. Right here I've got a deluxe from the line. This was Prowl, aka Mock Alert in Japan. And this guy absolutely dwarfs the deluxe car. They're not really in good scale, but whatever. I guess they weren't really designed too much with scale in mind. Anyway, I'll go ahead and move him out of the way and bring in Cybertron Prime here. And as you can see, there are a lot of similarities between these two figures. We got the sirens here up top. The coloring, of course, is very similar. He honestly looks a lot like a fire truck. Those kind of look like ladders. I mean, obviously they're not, but there's definitely some aesthetic similarities between the two. Anyway, all the Cybertron toys came with what they called Cyber Planet keys to activate different features on the toy. So, on this guy, You can plug this in to this little ladder approximation over here, and it would deploy 2 missiles. As you can see, and both those missiles will fire. And you can also put it on that side, and it deploys his gun. Kind of neat. And one thing you can do with this mode is you can kind of have him be a flying fire truck. It's a little bit awkward though, but I will demonstrate it for you. Just fold out the side there, kind of fold that down a little bit, and twist. And of course you would do the same thing on the other side. To me that looks kind of hokey, but if you like it, I mean, it is an option for you. It's not all that appealing to me, but that's okay. So let me go ahead and put that back together. And that's pretty much going to wrap up the vehicle mode on these guys. Now, like I said, I think there's definitely some similarities between these two figures. They're real similar size, similar aesthetic. And as you'll see, the similarities carry over into robot mode. And I will be right back to go over that. Hey guys, welcome back to part 2, robot mode. On the right hand side I've got RID Prime, and on the left hand side I got Cybertron Prime. And as you can see, these guys look fairly different in their basic robot modes. RID is kind of the more streamlined Prime, a little smaller. He's definitely more posable and just a sleeker guy, whereas Cybertron Prime is bigger, bulkier, somewhat less posable, but still a pretty good mold. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start off with the RID Prime, so I'll move Cybertron Prime off to the side here. Go ahead and start off just by giving you a basic 360 view of the guy. Now, I really like the way he looks just kind of in his basic robot mode without accoutrements. He looks pretty neat in my opinion. He's got a really good amount of posability. He's got a foot pivot, and it, of course, can rotate, go forward, back, side to side, the whole 9 yards. Bends at the knee, rotates at the knee. He's got a waist rotation. Top of the leg, he forward, back, and out. Does not rotate at the top of the leg. Now, there is one major issue with this mold, and it's actually more with the paint. I don't know if you can, how well you can see it. There's a couple of paint chips there on his chest, and that's a result of the type of paint that was used on the mold. Unfortunately, Hasbro used this type of paint a lot in Beast Wars, and it carried over to Beast Machines and a little bit into RID. And I'm not a big fan of that type of paint because it tends to flake off real easily and kind of leave the figures looking a little bit bad. Plus, there's a little bit of yellowing here on this guy, on the white plastic, and that was definitely, I have several figures from that era where that's happened to them, unfortunately, like the white plastic is yellowed. So, just some general QC issues of the whole line, and it's a little bit of a disappointment. Anyway, moving on with his articulation, his shoulder, due to the way he transforms, can actually move forward and back a little bit, of course. 360 rotation, rotates at the bicep, bends at the elbow, wrist rotation, and his head can pretty much go any direction, up, down, and of course 360 around. Overall, great figure in this mode. Really enjoy him. Anyway, but my absolute favorite way to have this guy is to have him armored up all the way except for one piece, and I'll go ahead and show you guys what that looks like. And it's a little bit of a process cutting all of his armor on him because there's so much of it. And of course, all the armor is what made up the back half of the fire truck in vehicle mode. And as you can see, this adds a good amount to his size, putting all this armor on. A whole lot of, adds some height to him, as well as a whole lot of additional bulk, too. Pull the gun out of that hand. I mean, the pieces go on pretty easily. And they fit on there extremely well. They generally don't come off no matter how you pose them or what you do with them, which is pretty cool. And it doesn't really, and one other thing I really like about the additional armor is it really doesn't restrict his articulation all that much either. He still retains 90% of what he's got. The only thing he really loses is his foot pivots and his wrist rotate. Well, actually, no, he gains, I guess, a little piece here because he's got wrist rotation on the larger hands that are armored, and the thumb can move up and down on it. So maybe it's actually just a wash. I don't know if it's any better or worse, but I mean, it's still pretty good as far as posability goes, and I really love the way that looks. Just having him in this mode, just like this, having all his armor on him except for the last piece. Now, I personally am not a huge fan to leave him in what's called, I guess, for lack of a better term, his super mode, which is where he has all of his armor on him, because I don't like the way the head looks, and I'm just not a huge fan of the overall look of this, but I'll go ahead and show it to you just for completeness. Okay guys, there's Optimus Prime in his super mode, and it's okay looking, but I gotta be honest, it doesn't, the way they changed the head, he doesn't even really look like an Optimus Prime to me. He looks almost more like an Ultraman or something. It's very Japanese anime style, and that stuff is fine looking, and of course, since Transformers is originally a Japanese series, it's a good homage to its origin, but honestly, I'm just not a huge fan of this mode due to its many issues. Anyway, he does come with, I'm sorry, his chest opens up, and I'm not sure exactly what that's supposed to be. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be a matrix chamber or something, but it does open up. And as you can see, he's also quite a bit taller in this mode. And one thing you can do is you can kind of have him use his ladder. And of course, the thing's falling apart like it always does. That's why I really don't like this mode. It just does not stay together well at all. And we just had pieces of the gun fly off. That's great. Anyway, you can hold his ladder as a real large weapon. If you like this, it's an option, but personally, I am just not a fan of this, honestly, whatsoever. Then go ahead and put RID Prime off to the side and grab Cybertron Prime here. And here he is, of course, in his basic robot mode. He's a pretty good looking mold. Very reminiscent of many Optimuses that we've gotten. He's got decent posability, nothing to write home about. He has nothing really going on in the foot. Bends at the knee, rotates at the knee. Forward, back on the leg, in and out. Doesn't rotate at the top of the leg. He doesn't have any waist articulation. One neat thing that he does have is he has a matrix chamber in his chest, which is a really nice touch. He rotates 360 at the shoulder, rotates at the bicep, bends at the elbow, doesn't do anything on his hands, and his head can rotate, doesn't go up and down. And that's pretty much going to cover his articulation. And I'll go ahead and show you what he looks armored up. And honestly, I really like the way he looks armored up a lot. It's actually a pretty neat look in my opinion. But again, just like RID Prime, it's a little bit of a process to get him there because you just gotta basically assemble him. But I have to say, it does stay together much better than RID Prime does, especially with all of RID Prime's. I'm sorry, it stays together better than RID's quote super mode. And it's just, it holds together much better. But, like I said, RID does well as long as you don't add the top piece. The very top piece. Bear with me, I gotta get his backpack on him. And that's the toughest part. There we go. And there you have Cybertron Prime. Let me just adjust him a little bit here. In his super mode. Pretty cool looking. And of course his Cyber Planet keys work in this mode just as well. This is vehicle mode. And that's what he looks like with his weapons. I just popped the key out of the other one. But you get the general idea of his appearance with his weapons fully deployed. And I'll go ahead and grab RID Prime. Put him next to him, that way you get an idea. They're roughly the same height in these modes. Just about the same. Heads are real close. Funny enough, it looks like the RID head is actually slightly taller than the Cybertron one, just by a hair. It's definitely not a wide margin. As far as which mold I like better, I think they both have their pros and cons to them. I managed to find RID Prime on eBay for a fairly reasonable price, under $100. I saw several of them. Now, as far as the Cybertron Prime goes, I couldn't find any that were honestly even under $100. Would I pay that much for them? Personally, no. But if you really like Prime, or you've been looking for that toy or whatever, I don't think it's unreasonable, just a little bit high priced for my taste. Anyway, that's going to pretty much wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I will see you next time.